Good evening, y'all. This is Spencer Cat. And the Hillbilly Think Tank. Welcome to the Hillbilly Think Tank, coming at you live from Tunnel Hills here in Hardin County, Kentucky, where I'm running for Magistrate District 3. Sorry, had some technical difficulties earlier, but here I am. Y'all, here in Hardin County, we know that there are three things that make life worth living. That is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Looking for simple life is what makes my life go around, but also looking to serve others on a daily basis. That's just what makes it worth getting up in the morning. Now, do you really feel like we've been served faithfully over the last year and a half? Man, or since January of last year? I can't say that I do. I know that this has been a roller coaster of the last few days. It seems like Congress is just unwilling to cede a little bit of power and invoke the 25th Amendment. No balls there among the guardians of the pedophiles. They're just going to keep on guarding their self-interests. Nation be damned, world be damned, because the whole world is economically in turmoil now due to this damn war. How else can we say it? It's absolutely ludicrous. We shouldn't have any more Americans losing their life over a conflict with Iran in the Middle East. I mean, we have never seen anything this stupid in American history. So just got to know if anyone is still following this fool. Do you need some help? That's what I need to know. Is it impossible to see that this is a fool's errand led by a fool? So, this county could use the billions upon billions of dollars that are being spent on this war. Would have been far better spent here in Hardin County, in Kentucky, and all the places in this nation that could use, some help. We have schools that could use refurbishing all across this nation. We have teachers that could use a bonus, a pay raise, a national salary. Most teachers have master's degrees or greater, and yet they're paid as if they have associate's degrees. In any other field, the amount of pay that teachers get, that's something you pay someone with maybe an associate's degree. We need to nationally recognize teachers. We don't need any more Trump wars. This is the guy who promised us to get away from warfare. Man, well, while I'm waiting for a couple comments to come on in, I'll take a little break here. Give y'all a little relaxation. I don't know if you were as worked up as I am, because it was a great taco night last night. Trump always chickens out. Well, I was glad for that chickening out. We didn't need a nuclear holocaust, but didn't even last 13 hours. Come on. When is the insanity going to be recognized for what it is? Complete insanity. All right. Give people time for their comments. I know usually folks like to make comments here, and then I'll be right back after this break.
prove myself in cold cases. Maybe things can go back to the way they were.
The way things were might not exist anymore. Val, need a word.
Harry.
Clean tags, good to go. Yeah, what good does that do if there's not enough guys to move it? I mean, am I the only one with any idea how fucking huge this deal is for us? Hey, look who it is. You should show up for work. What's going on?
All right, y'all. So less than 13 hours into a so-called ceasefire, Netanyahu decides to start launching missiles at the capital of Lebanon, Beirut. That was part of the ceasefire, was that would not happen. Yet here we frickin' go. You know, what do they have on Diaper Dan? That Diaper Dan can't just say, hey, Netanyahu, we're not going to give you any more money this year for your military toys if you don't cease and desist. You know, what is it that they've got on him? Are they feeding him crazy Kool-Aid? I don't know. I'd like to know, because we're once again in a situation where we can just see Captain Bone Spurs getting spun up one more time, you know? And do you know, though, that in this ceasefire, America is actually worse off when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz than it was before this goddamn war started? We now have to pay $2 million for each ship that America brings through the Strait of Hormuz. And anyone that is considered to be our ally has to do the same. There weren't any tolls on coming through the Strait of Hormuz before this war. But now we gave Iran a chance to show that there actually are pretty, big swinging dicks in the Middle East, that they've got more strength than they imagined. What did we get out of this bombing campaign? We have not defeated them with bombs. We've lost more American lives than we ever should have. 0 is what we should have lost. We've lost countless aircraft, as I put on last night, cost us $1.6 billion in loss in aircraft, drones. This whole thing is nothing but a boondoggle, and it is bringing the world order to its knees. And for what? For who? So, all right. If we don't think that I'm, coming up with anything intelligent enough, let's hear someone else give their version of it. Another vet has got something to say. But first, we'll take a look at what Beirut looked like today in the so-called ceasefire.
Ya Allah, Ya Allah. Shabab, Shabab.
So that doesn't look like a ceasefire at all.
Smart fucking parking lot. Oh, yeah, we did. We threatened him. See, Elbridge Colby, the Undersecretary of Defense, dragged the Vatican's U.S. rep into a closed-door Pentagon meeting and told him the United States has the military power to do whatever it wants. The Catholic Church had better take its side. And then, because these guys cannot help themselves, someone in the room brought up the Avignon papacy from the 14th century. That's when the French monarch was so pissed that the Pope chose the German monarch to be the head of the Holy Roman Empire that he put a hit out on the Pope, then forced the Pope to live in the Avignon region of France so the Pope would be under French rule and French laws. That's the historical reference a U.S. defense official chose in a real meeting that actually happened with the French cardinal who is the Vatican's representative to the U.S. And the Pope's crime? Well, Leo gave a speech saying war was bad and diplomacy based on force was replacing dialogue. Devastating stuff. Truly threatening. Absolute lunatic. The Vatican has taken this seriously. They canceled Leo's U.S. visit for the 250th anniversary. And of course, Pete Kegsbreath, his Pentagon called the whole meeting respectful and reasonable. We threatened the Pope, and I guarantee you MAGA still thinks we're the morally superior nation. What the fuck? Did we just threaten the Pope? Like the Pope, God's guy. The vicar of Christ, the dude in the funny hat who lives in a country the size of a Walmart fucking parking lot. Oh, yeah, we did. We threatened him. See, Elbridge Colby, the Undersecretary of Defense, dragged the Vatican's U.S. rep into a closed-door Pentagon meeting and told him the United States has the military power to do whatever it wants. The Catholic Church had better take its side. And then, because these guys cannot help themselves, someone in the room brought up the Avignon papacy from the 14th century.
All right. So threatening the Pope now. I mean, we know that Whiskey Pete Kegsbreath did not allow Catholics to have a Friday service in the Pentagon on Good Friday during Holy Week. But he did announce that he was having a Protestant service, and he actually led one of the wartime prayers there. That is cringeworthy, but hey, you know, I guess he has got balls of steel. Thinks threatening the Pope is something holy. I mean, come on. How far back is this administration trying to take us? How far back into the past? Back to when Protestants and Catholics are fighting each other? I mean, come on. We've come beyond this in America. Most places have, at least. This is just absolutely something that I never really thought I would see in my lifetime, but here we are. All right, well, let's see a couple of other people's takes on what's going on. Again, besides just mine, it is absolutely something unimaginable. You know, I really thought last night when I ate my tacos at local great Mexican restaurant that I was really having the best Taco Tuesday of my life, when, you know, it looked like we were going to have a ceasefire that, like I said, didn't last even 13 hours. But all right, what else do we have as far as craziness that we can hand out in this world? Who else can go crazy with us or as much as us? Is there anybody else? That's what I really would love to know, because I think we're driving the crazy train right now.
Here's Donald Trump attempting to negotiate peace talks with Iran.
Yeah, sure. Get down.
No, I ain't mad at you. I just want to talk to you.
So let's just look.
The most important thing here is this line. We received a 10-point proposal from Iran and believe it's a workable basis on which to negotiate. Okay, let's take a look at what that 10-point plan actually is. All right, the 10-point plan includes all of these amazing things for the United States. What a victory. Commitment to no further aggression, continuation of Iran's control over the Strait of Hormuz, acceptance of uranium enrichment. So, you know, I guess that Iran can never have a nuclear weapon. Guess that was a fucking lie, huh? Lifting all primary sanctions, lifting all secondary sanctions, termination of all UN Security Council resolutions, termination of all Board of Governor resolutions, payment of financial compensation to Iran for everything we've destroyed, withdrawal of U.S. combat forces from the region, and cessation of war on all fronts, including against Hezbollah in Lebanon. And that number 10 is going to become very, very, very important as we move forward in this video. Now,
all right. So this coming from the man who says he is the master of the art of the deal. He claims to have written a book on how to make a deal. And that's the deal. This deal is far worse than anything that was there before when it came to Iran. Like I said, we're going to have to pay $2 million per ship that any U.S. flag-waving ship tries to bring through the Strait of Hormuz. And any ally of ours is also going to have to pay that. Any ally of Iran is not going to pay that. But there is a toll now for coming through the Strait of Hormuz. There was not one before this frickin' war started. And yet, here we go. These are the 10 points that we agreed to with Iran. Iran is coming out with more money after the war than they had before the war started. Come on. This is your deal maker? This is your deal maker in chief? Under the Iran nuclear agreement that President Obama made, worldwide nuclear inspectors could go anywhere they wanted in Iran at any time they wanted and inspect and make sure that they didn't have but 10% capability, that the only nuclear capability they had was for making nuclear energy, not nuclear bombs, that they could never have enough fission materials to do that. But when Diaper Dan became president number 45, he ripped up that deal and set us on the course that we're on right now. Somebody tell me how this right now is a better place than we were in 2 months ago. Man, worldwide chaos and this.
Now, obviously, the MAGA neocons are crashing the out this morning over this. The Larry Loomers, the Mark Levines, absolutely furious that, well, they fucking fell for it again, huh? Now, to be honest, guys, I thought this was fantastic. This was like the best possible case scenario for everyone involved. We said this from the very start of the war. Best case scenario here is Donald Trump completely surrenders. He walks away. He declares total and utter victory. Nobody believes it, but it's okay because his ego gets a little pat on the back, even though he's being laughed at on the world stage. And we stop wasting hundreds of billions of dollars in American soldier lives in a war in the Middle East. And potentially we leave the Middle East. I think it would be absolutely fantastic. So I'm all about this deal. I'm not going to knock Trump for this. Again, it's the opposite of everything he promised his own base, but it's great for the American firsters and the people who actually care about America and the economy and all these different things, right? We're getting out of this war and potentially out of the Middle East completely, right? Great stuff. However, there's one loser in this 10-point plan, one really big loser, and that's our greatest ally. And so they've got no fucking interest in letting this ceasefire go through. And in fact, they've already made sure it's not going through. Oh, but real quick, forgot to mention, that's not all. There's also some additions to that 10-point plan, and that is to comply with the ceasefire. Trump's agreed that all American oil tankers passing through the Strait of Hormuz would be required to pay Iran a fucking $2 million per tanker fee.
All right. So I'm not the only one reporting on it, you know? Absolutely. This, to me, I'd keep asking, did someone slip me acid and I didn't know it? Because this is freaking absolutely unbelievable. I cannot believe this is the world we live in, and we're calling this guy a genius. Why is he at 31% popularity and support right now? What the hell? So, yeah. So we got Adios 5416 saying Trump. All right. Well, is Trump your daddy or is Trump a bitch? Which one do you mean there by that? Because I think he is absolutely bonkers. We should be invoking the 25th Amendment, the Constitution. No one in the Guardians of the Pedophile Party has the balls to do that. No one has the gumption to say, hey, I've got to save the world from going to the brink again of nuclear holocaust and disaster. That's where we stand right now. And to think otherwise is just to say, hey, I've got to ride the crazy train. no matter how far it takes me. And, yeah. All right. So, on other news fronts, Israel has now hit Lebanon with the heaviest airstrikes of the war, killing 89 and wounding 700. I mean, Netanyahu will not be happy unless we are on the brink of nuclear war. He just will not be happy unless he can push us there. So, reporting here says in Beirut, reporters saw people on motorcycles picking up wounded and transporting them to hospitals because there were not enough ambulances to transport the wounded and get them in time. So this is just not at all anything that we can keep on rolling with in this world. The toll for Israel's Lebanon strikes, right? Yeah. It's gone to 254 dead, over 1,100 wounded in the war's deadliest day. So, yeah, the Iranian president, Masoud Pezeshkian, says ceasefire in Lebanon was an essential condition of his country's agreement with the United States. So he says, all right, ceasefire over. What kind of absolute chicanery are we getting into? Does anyone not understand this? Is it just me? All right. So let's go back to the Epstein files. Pam Bondi got fired, and the Department of Justice is now using that as an excuse for her to skip the Epstein deposition. The subpoena was to her by name. You don't get out of testifying to Congress because Trump fired you right before your deposition. I've said it before and I'll say it again. This is the biggest cover-up in U.S. history. Absolutely outrageous. And I have to agree with her and him. Nothing more outrageous, between the war and, this is all just one big cover-up. And we're sending the world into chaos in order to cover up the Epstein files. All right. So Trump is saying U.S.-Iran talks will be behind closed doors. Well, there's obviously not going to be any more talks now. So, only one group of meaningful points were acceptable to the United States, but he gave no other detail about the negotiations. Well, yeah, because everyone should be outraged over what America is now going to have to pay, or was going to have to pay, if this ceasefire had stayed on. But it didn't stay on. So, all right, y'all. Hey, Tom Armstrong. Good to see you. Tom said he missed the start. Well, Tom, yeah. Just talking about how Taco Tuesday, I thought it was one of the most delicious Taco Tuesdays I ever had. Wife came home from work. I said, babe, it is the most amazing Taco Tuesday of our lifetime. Let's go get some real tacos because Trump chickened out like he always does, right? Trump always chickens out. We needed that chicken out instead of nuclear holocaust. But Tom, as you probably know, less than 13 hours later, it's all back on again. And yeah, I agree, Tom. He says he still find myself reflexively typing Pammy Pooh's name as Blondie instead of Bondi. Yeah, Bimbo should that be added to it too. All right. Oh my God. So, y'all, we can't keep doing this yo-yo back and forth between crazy train and semi-crazy train, right? Semi-crazy for this regime and this person would be enough to get anyone else committed. How no one is having the balls to say, hey, we should have voted on this war and we're bringing back the War Powers Act that belongs to Congress. They don't have the balls to do that. They don't mind sending us near nuclear holocaust because they're all got their American Israel Public Affairs Committee money, their AIPAC money coming in. They don't want that to be shut off because that's what keeps them running their campaigns, no matter which party we're talking about now, Republican or Democrat. Y'all, I feel and I knew that the attacks in October, they were absolutely horrendous and heinous. I was pro-Ukraine and pro-Israel all the way up until Netanyahu and Trump announced they were going to make Gaza into their luxury resort area. And nope, that was a bridge too far for me. And here we are. It's obvious that Netanyahu knows if he is not fighting a war, that court injunction, we're supposed to appear in court and be indicted, that's going to go down. The only thing saving him is running a war. So he's willing to keep it going as long as he possibly can. And that is not good for American safety. That's not good for our economy. What are you getting out of this? What am I getting out of this? How is Hardin County getting better roads when we're spending these billions of dollars on this war? $200 billion. They want that and more. On top of a nearly $1 trillion budget that they already got this year. Next year, he wants $1.5 trillion. No more medical care for grandparents because there's no money for Medicare, he says. No money for poor kids to get their medical care taken care of through Medicaid, he says. No school lunch money, no school breakfast money. No money for SNAP or anything else either, he says. Only money for war. Interesting. Well, so when is enough enough? When are we going to see real leaders take back the reins, bring us to 3 branches of government with true checks and balances, not just letting the king do whatever he wants? Pam Bondi is not going to have to go to appear before Congress because the president is claiming she has presidential immunity. Wow. All right. That's what happens when, yep. That's right, Robbie. You're saying, thank you, Mr. President. I hope that's ironic. To me, it's an ironic thank you, Mr. President Trump. Because I'm not thanking him for the loss of a dozen American lives. I'm not thanking him for sending farmers bankrupt because last year the tariff wars destroyed the economy of so many farmers here in Hardin County. They couldn't sell their soybeans. China wasn't buying them, and Canada wasn't buying them after goddamn tariff war that this president started. And now, right now, during planting season, they can't afford the $5.50 a gallon it costs to get gas here in Hardin County and to get diesel. They can't fill up their tractors, and they can't afford the fertilizer due to all of the prices of fertilizer getting jacked up due to that urea not coming through the Strait of Hormuz. So, yeah. No, thank you, President Trump, unless you mean that ironically. Yeah. So, y'all, just got to remember these billions of dollars, and it's going to be trillions by the time it's over, could have been far better spent on feeding folks that are hungry in this county. It could have been better spent housing folks in this county. Could have been far better spent helping out the 1,600 people who lost their good paying job at Blue Oval SK when Blue Oval SK shut it down, and now Ford's taken it over but hasn't retooled it yet. Right? Could have been helping those folks, but they said no. President Trump said there will be no money for labor department next year. And his budget that he's proposing, the $1.5 trillion for the military industrial complex, for the DOD. That's where he wants to spend all the money that American taxpayers faithfully pay. It's going to be another big, extremely ugly, ginormous bill if he has his way, but it won't have any money for Americans first. It'll be Americans last when it comes to regular old working Americans like you and me. Epstein class first is what we'll have written on it, but nothing for regular Americans. It'll be regular Americans last, working man last. All right, y'all. Remember to like and subscribe. I am running for magistrate here in Hardin County's District 3. Y'all, if you elect me to office, I will go down there to the fiscal court with passion for Hardin County, for our hardworking folks that live here in this county, for our farmers, for our small businesses, for our veterans like myself, for our teachers who have been neglected for far too long. I will make sure that our roads are the best in the state, that our emergency medical services are absolutely the best in the state. And that promise that we put out there, that there will be a public transportation system run by the county, that will come to fruition if you elect me to District 3 as magistrate. Y'all, in the meantime, let's remember that Kentucky's motto, united we stand, divided we fall, that's not just a catchphrase. That is the bedrock of this state, of this county, of who we are as Kentuckians. So I know that I am my brother's keeper. I am my sister's keeper. And we all, when we love our neighbors as ourselves, there's no way we can be divided. So there's no way we can fall, no matter what we go through. We will come through this together. All right, y'all. Bless your corazón, which is Spanish for heart. And do not forget those deployed overseas tonight. Many of them, my brothers, my sisters. Let's thank them for real by bringing them home.